The flood and his sons. All right, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay. I'm sorry we've not been able to hold the live session since yesterday. We're supposed to hold it yesterday, but some things came up, and even today, I had to attend to a situation. So, as no longer I got back to the house, so have to do this live session at this time. So, wherever you're watching from, you're welcome to today's live session. Quickly, we're going to be talking about the Noah story. All right. So, that story is written in the Bible about Noah, and we are told that Noah, in his time, he was right with God, and so God told him to build an ark, to save him and his household, and then God had to send a flood to destroy the rest of the people of the world and all that. So it's a story that a lot of people believe. So many people believe that story to be true, to be a true story. They believe there was a worldwide flood that actually destroyed the. They believe that there was such a flood, and actually happened, and then people were, destroyed. The whole world was destroyed because of iniquity or because of sin or whatever. Now, means that looking at this story, logically, looking at it with common sense and with reason, you will get to understand that this story is not actually true. It's just a myth, you know. It's just a myth that from history, we've been able to, and scientific studies have been able to understand that time floods have been there. The whole world have been experiencing flood, but there are no records or no such records of a flood that actually took the whole world. There are no records, of a flood that actually happened and the whole world was in such a deluge. No records, but there were pockets of floodings that were recorded in history in certain places around the world. And floods have not ceased. Floods have always been there, even to today, such floods. And the funny thing is, in those days, they didn't have all the information we have today. And in those days, the world right now is like a global village where we intermingle, we interact with one another, and all that. That was not there. So people on one side of the world in history, okay, flood myths have been there in history. It's not a new thing. In other cultures, in Hinduism, in Dwakalion, there before even the account that is recorded in the book of Genesis. So there were other flood myths, flood stories of how water, covered the earth and all that. Different cultures have their own those myths. They are also in other, cultures too. They're also there too. You see that? So Noah is not a real figure that happened in the whole world, that the whole world was flooded, and then Noah prepared an ark to save his own household. All right. There were in other parts of the story, to terms with. So the whole story of Noah and the flood and all that, they're just mythical stories that existed, okay, before even the account of the Jews or that were the Hebrews or the Jews that was written in the Bible. Before that account, all these stories were there in other, civilizations even before that time. So the Jewish people own versions. They wrote their own version like every other tribe and all that. Okay, just like today, constitutional democracy, is everywhere. So, like for instance, the Nigerian Constitution, um, bears some resemblance to the British Constitution and some resemblance to the American Constitution and all that. And it has undergone several amendments, from time to time. So the Noah story is not actually a true story. All right. The Noah story is not a true story. It is a myth. Just myth. Just discover that it's difficult for that meteorology, geology, study all those things. Water, follows a cycle. All right. It follows a cycle. It comes down and then it evaporates and all that. Because of the cycle that water follows, it is difficult for water to cover the whole earth. Look at the shape of the earth. In those days, when these stories of flood, Noah's flood, and all that were written, the people did not know that the earth was spherical. All these stories were written based on the fact that they believed the earth was flat. They believed there was heaven above and then the ground. Understanding of their surroundings and their environment. So they tried to explain it because they felt like God punished the earth with a. Think about it. Like recently, in Nigeria right now, they're very pathetic. Now, if it was in ancient times, they would have written some stories about, their God angry and now flooding the place with water. But we know that what happened in Meduguri, are on top, decades of buildings that have not the flood and all that. So if they were to write a story about it, if it was in the primitive time, primitive years and all that of human existence, they would have written about it that God was angry and all that, or have written such stories about that flood. They wouldn't have even known that the flood did not happen in other places because at that time in South America, in Canada, in other places, they didn't know. They felt it was only that Middle East, that area, and people that they mingle with and all that. Those were the people that were in the world. They didn't know other people existed until people began to cross borders. Most of these things based on ignorance. So there was no worldwide flood anywhere that happened. And then there was no boat that was built and all that. People have tried to say, oh, they did some research, they found, remains of a boat and all that. All these people are just content creators. These are people who just try to get your attention, to make money off writing something and doing a story around something they believe they can prove, but they cannot prove it. Nobody can prove it can happen in the way the word is. All right. So Noah, the story of Noah is just a mythical story. Just a mythical story that was written by men and their own gods and adapted it to their own family and all that. And then to Noah's sons, we are told Noah gave birth to Shem, Ham, and Japheth and all that. And then we are told that one of them saw his father's nakedness. That was why, his father cursed him, and then the curse worked. And that one that was cursed is Ham. He is the father of Africans, that Africans are cursed and all that. The Hamitic, we call it the Hamitic narrative, but the Hamitic narrative has been used against Africans. And it is absurd and absolutely wrong for Africans to say that the children of Ham or their children of Noah. That story has nothing to do with us. That story has nothing to do with Africa. All right. And all that. Those were the only people they mingled with. They didn't mingle with the rest of Africa. They didn't know the world was this big and all that. They thought the world happened in that area. They didn't know that Africans are Hamites, or the Hamitic narrative is a very, very wrong narrative. And it's actually painful that a lot of Africans believe this to be true. That the God of the Jews was the God that created the whole world, and then he had anger, issues and all that, grew angry with all of mankind, and then decided to destroy all of mankind. But one question you have to ask is that, okay, the things, the things that we are told that this God, was angry about, that people did in those days, those things people have even done more in this time. So why is that God not angry about it? So why is that God not angry? Why has he not come back with another flood or with something to destroy the world and all that and rescue some people? So these stories are cultural stories. These stories are cultural stories. Dear African, let me tell you the truth. You are not a product of Adam or Eve or Noah or Shem or Ham or Japheth or whatever. You are not a product of any of that. All right. Your ancestors are different. They have a different ancestry. So we human beings, we have different ancestry. We have different color, different facial features, different body structures, different body features. We have our own different ancestors. We are not born by one particular man or one particular woman that were locked in the garden and all that. Then they gave birth to God to the time of Noah. God, God now saved Noah from the flood and his family. He got drunk. His son saw his nakedness. And then what did he do? He had to curse that son that saw his nakedness and all that. And then the whole world was, the whole black race or children of Ham were cursed. These people only tried to, find explanation for certain things they felt were happening. For instance, they look at certain people, why are they not doing well, or why are they like this? Why are they explanation for it? They create an explanation for it. They create something for it. All right, rise from other stories that were written before concerning the flood. So every culture had to write their primitive that no special God somewhere that instruct evidence. What it's not even an evidence, it's no facts, no real facts, no discoveries, no nothing that has to do with it. And the story looks very vague and false and all that, because how can somebody build a boat and all the animal species in the world were put in that boat? Lions, goats, sheep, and all that were put in the same boat and they didn't devour them. Come on, you got to ask questions. See that? And I always say that anybody that writes your story owns the narrative, and then the person who owns you, the person owns everything about you. So it's important that you write your own story. Nations were powerful in the primitive era. Nations were powerful because they were able to write their own story. Stories were powerful. They was used to, colonize people, to take lands, to take places and all that in those days. And it's still being used today. Okay, so if you believe everything that you God owns the world, the resources in the world, and all that, lays claim to the land them and all that, so they will take portions of the land. All of these stories, they are mythical stories. All right, never existed. These are mythical stories, Jewish cultural stories, mythical stories that were adapted from other stories that were before, okay, these stories. So they had to rewrite their own story and give it their own form and all that. Okay, so these stories are fictional. All right, go and do your own research. The purpose of this is for you to go and do your own research and gain the knowledge by yourself and know what is true and what is not true, what is fictional, what is not fictional, so that you can gain knowledge and become a better person. We can build a better world if we're able to deal with religious superstitions and all that. All of these things have been used to cause a lot of chaos in the world, have been used to um, colonize a lot of people and take resources and take a lot of things from them. The fight between the Jews, the Israelites, and the Israelis, and then the Hamas and all that, and the Islamists is based on some of these stories that were written, about the land, owners of who owns the land and all that. They're talking about where Abraham sacrificed, everybody laying claim to Abraham and all that. I think I talked about it the other day. Everybody laying claim to Abraham where he sacrificed. Oh, we are the children of Abraham. We own the land. We own this place and all that. So all of these narratives, primitive narratives, these are